Welcome to this podcast, My Positive Birth, a little corner of the internet where I will be collecting positive stories from women birthing their babies across the UK. My name is Lisa. I'm a doula in southwest London. I have 3 children and 2 positive birth stories. I truly believe that we can all learn so much by listening to the positive stories of women and families who have gone before us. What their birth experience was like, what they did, how they felt, how they feel now, a few months or even years later. So come and surround yourself with positive birth stories, told in women's own words. And I hope you'll find a village here to calm you, but also to inspire you and give you confidence in birth. All women and babies deserve a positive birth experience. So let's get cracking on today's episode. Hi, Georgina. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Perhaps would you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself and your family?
Yeah, so my name's Georgina. I'm a mum of 2. My daughter Coco is going to be 3 in September. And then my son Ambrose is 16 months. And we live in Barnes with my husband Angus. I am currently training to be a doula, which is how I know the wonderful Lisa. Because we met last week, and we both sort of have the shared passion and interest in positive birth, which is, why I'm here now speaking to Lisa. I don't know what else you want me to say.
No, that's brilliant. Thank you. And I'm just in awe. My youngest is 6 now, and I feel like I had at least 5 years where I couldn't do anything. So I think you're amazing for all the things you're doing with your little ones at home. And can I just ask you, you've obviously got 2 children, and would you say that both of your births were positive experiences?
Yes, they were both positive experiences, but they were different because my first birth, which is the one I'm going to be talking about today, was a home birth, a planned home birth. And my second was a hospital birth in a birth centre. It would have been a home birth, but due to our living situation, we were living with my mum at the time, and it wouldn't have worked, it being a home birth with some other family members around. But yeah, on the whole, I would say they were both very positive birth experiences.
Brilliant. Just what I like to hear. So lovely. You are going to talk to us about your first birth, which I actually think is brilliant, because I think there's a bit of a myth out there that first births in particular always have to be difficult and tricky experiences. So it's really great to hear about positive first birth. So do you want to tell us whatever you'd like to from sort of right from when you conceived, really, and the pregnancy and how that went?
Yeah, so actually I want to start probably way before that, which is even when I was a child, I always had like a bit of an obsession with babies and birth, and always used to ask my mum about our births, her births with me and my sisters. Even when I was 8, we had to do like a school project, and I was like, I really want to do mine on babies. And my mum was like, I just don't know whether that is, I don't think there's like enough there, let's choose something scientific. But anyway, just growing up and right up until I actually got pregnant, birth was something that I never feared. And I know that is down to the way that my mum spoke to me about her births with us. So I really have her to thank, really, for that mindset. And I think a lot of her generation have that mentality, like it was, just something that women just did. And there wasn't a lot of fear around it, or at least not that I'm aware of. I think that changed probably when birth started happening in hospitals, probably 70s onwards. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Even though I was born after the 70s. But yeah, I don't know. It's all down to my mum, I think, that why I went into my birth with a positive mindset. So when I first conceived in 2000, and it was actually 2018, I had a miscarriage and it was very early on. But then I got pregnant again on the next cycle. And I always knew that I wanted to kind of do hypnobirthing, and I was so excited, and I didn't really have like a particular birth plan, but I knew I wanted to go on like a hypnobirthing course. And so I did it with Better Birth Stories. And it was on the course. So first of all, I have to say that there was no question that we hadn't even discussed a home birth. We had discussed that I was going to go give birth in a birth centre at St Thomas's because we were living in Peckham at the time. So I think it was probably around the 6-month mark, I did this hypnobirthing course. And the course leader talked a lot about home birth and how positive home births can be. And my husband, Gus, turned to me and said, well, would you consider giving birth at home? And I said, well, yeah, I'd love to. I just didn't think that you would be happy about that. And he said, no, like, I hate hospitals. I think that this would be amazing. So we literally decided there and then on the course that was what we were going to do. So yeah, that's how the home birth part happened. And then we actually moved house, and my new hospital, our new local hospital was Kingston. So I called them up, I called the home birth team, and then basically planned for my home birth. The Kingston home birth team were absolutely amazing, and all of my appointments were at home, which was just like light and day compared to going into hospital, or I could just be on my sofa, and it was just wonderful. And then I should probably start talking about my going into labour.
No, I think the build-up's really, really helpful. And also the kind of, the thought processes. And was your husband, was he always super keen to come to that course and be involved? Was he quite engaged in?
He was really engaged. I don't think he's as into some of the hypnobirthing stuff as I was, but during my both births, he was very helpful with my breathing and reminding me of what I was capable of, and breath work, which obviously as hypnobirthing, I guess he probably just wouldn't want to put a label on it. I wasn't scared. I think that is one of the sort of main pieces of wisdom that I'd probably want to share, is that not being scared and really understanding and doing so much reading and surrounding myself with positive birth stories, and kind of shutting off any negativity. That is what really helped me, and understanding what my body was going to be doing when I was in labour, and the whole way through pregnancy. So really kind of getting in tune with myself. So when labour did start, well, first of all, my waters broke, which we were told was kind of quite rare that your waters break before labour starts, and usually your waters break during labour. But I'd been bouncing on my ball, so I was 30. My daughter was born at 39 plus 4. And on 39 plus 3, I was bouncing so much on my ball. And everyone was my husband was joking, saying you probably should chill out a bit. And then the next morning at 6 a.m., my waters broke in bed. And I did that thing where I was oh my God, I think I'm peeing the bed. And my husband was no, you're not. Your waters are breaking. This is happening. Anyway, so I called my home birth team. I told them, and they were look, your labour's going to start probably quite soon. So just chill out, and just call us when things ramp up. But then nothing really happened for a long time. I went and got my nails done, went on a walk, and just sort of waited patiently or maybe impatiently for my labour to start.
Was there any concern in your mind? Because often hospital policy would be that you've got a sort of certain amount of time, usually between 24 and 72 hours, and then they'd want you to come in. But was that in your mind, or did the home birth team mention that?
They did, and I was nervous that there was a stop clock on me. But by the evening, my husband and I, we went to Pizza Express. And the midwife called me and said, are you feeling anything yet? And I was no, not really. And she said, how's the baby moving? And I thought, do you know what? I'm not actually sure. I think she's fine. I'm not really sure. When someone asks you and you actually question it. Anyway, she said, why don't you just go into hospital? I know you're obviously not having hospital birth, but go in, be checked, and then go home, and then go into bed, and your labour will probably start. So we did that, and on the way to Kingston, it was 10 at night, Coco, my daughter, was kicking away. And I just thought, oh God, should we just turn around? But then we thought, no, we're on our way, let's just get checked. So we went in, we said, oh, we think that there's reduced movements. So we were seen really quickly. And basically, after like 2 hours of waiting, and my contractions had actually just started, they weren't like hardcore or anything, but I knew that things were happening. We were like, right, we're ready to go. And then the not midwife, but whoever was on duty came in and said, oh, we're just going to get a consultant to come and see you. And then a consultant came in and said, you're not going home, I'm going to induce you. And I said, I really don't want to be induced. This is not the plan. I know my baby is fine. Like, my baby was kicking all the way to hospital before I even came in. And she said, well, you told us you had reduced movements. And I said, I know, I was a bit scared. I just wanted a bit of reassurance, but I know my baby's fine. I planned a home birth and that's what I want. So it was a bit awkward. And then I said, look, can me and my husband just call our midwives? And she said, yeah, that's fine. So we called our midwives and explained the situation. And we said, like, what do you think we should do? And they said, look, like, basically this is kind of up to you. You make the decision. I think you know what's right for you. And so we were like, fine, we're going to go home. And because, do you know what? Like, I do think like, I felt really strong in that moment. But then I did have to remind myself, like, because my midwife said, like, you do what you want to do. And because they didn't say, like, you need to stay in and be induced, I think it was a mixture of the support from my amazing midwives and my own kind of courage of my convictions that made me realize that I didn't need to be induced. Like, everything was fine. So we basically just walked out, went home, and I knew I'd started to have some contractions, but they were kind of manageable, but I was exhausted and went to sleep for a couple of hours. And then about 4 a.m, I was like, I had a really big contraction, like woke up, and then things really started to, well, what I thought was kind of ramp up, but I didn't realize I had like another amount of hours to go. So yeah, it was like a beautiful sunny day. We had the doors open, like our patio doors, and kind of we just, from about 5, 6 a.m, we were just sort of downstairs in our sitting room, and my husband had the TV on. I feel like there was some sort of like match going on that day. I can't even remember, but he was definitely watching sport.
Priorities.
Yeah, he definitely had his priorities in the right place. And then I think at about 9, he called our midwives, and a midwife came over and we had a chat. And I think, I was definitely like, this baby's coming soon. And she was like, no, I think you've still like, you've got a bit to go. I think I was checked at that point, and I was about 3 centimeters dilated, and I felt really kind of despondent. But I think things can change so fast. So it was fine, and things really started to ramp up. I was doing a lot of breathing. I did have hypnobirthing music on, but I think I really started zoning out, which is what you do anyway when your labor really starts to ramp up. I don't really remember that, but I was doing a lot of up breathing for that sort of first stage of labor, and doing a lot of visualization, and that definitely helped. And then what happened next? So,
did you have any specific, like, TENS machine or hot water bottles? Or
so I did use a TENS machine at the beginning, but I found it so annoying that some people love them and really swear by them. Like, a friend lent hers to me because it really worked for her, but it didn't work for me. And also because I was going to be getting into a birthing pool, I don't think I would have been able to use it in there anyway.
Yeah.
So I did a lot. I was kind of on my ball a lot. I'd actually got in the shower with the ball, managed to get the birth ball into the shower. And so I did a lot of that. That was before we put the pool up. Then Frances, my midwife, so she left because she was like, I've got another birth to go to. I remember being like outraged, and I was like, what? This baby's coming. And she was like, no, I'm going to go to another birth now. Like, you hang tight. Just keep doing what you're doing. Maybe in a couple of hours, get that pool blown up. So we'd hired this birth pool from Kingston Birth Pool Hire, which is an amazing scheme for anyone who's in Southwest London and wants to hire a birth pool for a home birth. Basically, it's a scheme where the birth pools are just passed around from person to person, and you don't have to pay for it. All you have to pay for is a new liner and hose. And then you pick the birth ball up, and then someone comes to pick a birth ball up off you after you've had your baby. So then my husband, he got the birth pool blown up, and the midwife arrived again, and I got into the pool, and it was just amazing. Like the feeling of getting into warm water was incredible. And it basically it felt like I was in my own sort of protective space that no one could get to me unless they kind of asked, which was like really nice. My husband didn't get in to the water. He stayed outside, but he was with me every step of the way. And so we were in the pool, and then I could see this is quite a funny little thing that happened that my husband reminded me of the other day. He started cooking some lunch, and he started cooking some pasta. And he asked my midwife, Frances, whether she wanted some, and he was like, yeah. And he started frying chilies, and I not only were me and the midwife coughing, but I remember saying to him, Gus, come here, mid contraction. I remember saying to him, like, don't make it too spicy, because I was really worried about the midwife, which is quite funny because I was like thinking of her knees. I didn't want her head to be blown off by the spicy pasta. Anyway, that was quite funny.
Gus was having a great time. I can see why Gus wanted the birth at home now. He's watching his sport, cooking his pasta.
Exactly. Anyway, do you know what? One mistake we did make was having a clock up. And my doula mentor has said to me as a doula, like, just remove all clocks from any labour you go to, because I wasn't really aware, but he kept thinking, right, this baby's going to be born in an hour. This baby's going to be born in like next 45 minutes. And the timer just went on and on and on. I got to a point where I was sort of getting out of the pool, going upstairs. I really wanted to be kind of on the loo, in private. I think, so at this point, I was really getting a pushing urge, but I don't think I was really aware of it. But I think I wasn't sure. But I knew things were happening because I was really kind of going down and deeper. I wasn't really able to talk in between my contractions. And I really just wanted my own space. And my midwives were amazing. They kind of just like hung outside the loo while I was just in there with Gus. And I was really kind of like pulling down on him. Poor him, he was covered in so many bruises after, but most of them were from him pinching himself because he couldn't cope seeing me in that state. But I do think probably a lot was sort of me holding on to him. And then we kind of went into the bedroom, and at this point, I think this is where I was transitioning, because most of the time through the birth, I was saying, like, in my head, I can do this, like positive affirmations, and I really didn't want to think any negative thoughts or I can't do this. But the part where I transitioned, which I know is a lot for, a lot of birthing people, that is the point where you think, get me out of this situation, like packing my bags, going home. So I was kind of in the bedroom, on all fours, and I remember saying, like, can you just take me to hospital now? Like, I want a C-section. I want like an epidural. And they said, right, come on, George, let's go downstairs. Let's go to the pool. Let's get back in. Like, this baby's coming. So suddenly I had this like new lease of energy. Got back into the pool, and I really felt this urge to push. I remember saying, I think I need to push. And they were like, well, have a go. If you can feel that urge, then go with it. So, yeah, I think it was about 2 hours after that point until Coco was born. And I know this happens a lot in first time mums, but there was a lot of, pushing, and they had a mirror in the water, and the midwife could see, and she could see Coco's head sort of going up and down the birth canal. And I just remember thinking, like, this, I just don't know how she's going to come out, because it was hard. That was hard. It wasn't like my second, which, I felt the urge to push, and my son literally came out in like one breath. Literally, he just sort of came out. But with Coco, it was hard. It was hard work. But my husband was feeding me little like jelly babies and sweets between each contraction, to kind of give me that boost, that energy, because I hadn't really eaten much. I was drinking a lot of coconut water, and something that did really help was with each contraction, my husband counted down with me from 20 seconds down to 1. And the counting down really helps. It's like when you do a workout. I like it when I do a workout, and I like seeing how much time I've got left on the clock until I can like should chill out and have a drink or a break. And that really worked with me for each surge. I knew when it was going to be over and I could breathe and go back to zero and, I'm fine. I think he did that with me for, pretty much till the end. We just kept counting down and I did it with him. And I think that's a technique lots of people use when they're having panic attacks because it really kind of slows you down. And then the midwives really worked with me to help me find a position in the water. And I ended up sort of being almost sort of sitting up with my arms sort of around the pool. And then I think Coco was sort of getting closer and closer. Gus went up to the loo and I remember just shouting, "Gus, come downstairs!" Because I knew that, I knew it was about to happen and I just didn't want him to miss out on the birth. And yeah, so then at this point, I just had really got this, because it'd been so long and I had been like, there was that phase where I was not really able to talk to anyone, but right near the end, I really had this, like, I don't know, I kind of woke up a bit and it was like, can't really explain it. I was just like there, alive and like ready. Anyway, I felt the burning, which is where obviously your baby's crowning, burning down there. And the midwives really sort of taught me through, like, not pushing really hard at this point and sort of letting her come out. Anyway, after a couple of pushes, I think her head came out first, and then the next contraction, the rest of her body came out in the water. And then she was put straight on me. And obviously it was it was just incredible. But the most amazing experience of my life, hands down. And yeah, I just loved it, even though it felt very long and hard at times, but I only look back at it with kind of happiness and pride. I think it's probably like my like proudest achievement, definitely. And so Coco was on me. We didn't know at this point whether she was a boy or a girl. I was just sort of lying there, like, can't believe I've just done this incredible thing. Like, there's a human on me and like, she's fine. But we didn't know that, she was a boy, or she wouldn't know she was a girl at this point. And the midwives were doing all these checks, checking me, checking her. And it was literally, it felt like 5 minutes, but it was probably less than 5 minutes later. I said, hang on a second, does anyone know who this little person is? Because I don't. And they were like, yeah, hang on, we just give us a second. And I was like, no, I want to find out. So then they lifted her up and they were like, it's a girl. And I was so happy. I'd kind of said the whole way through, I think she's a girl. I feel like this baby's a girl. And then, so they got me out of the pool quite quickly because you can get quite cold, I think, after giving birth. The water had really started to cool down, and it was time to birth my placenta. So we moved onto the sofa, and yeah, then I birthed the placenta, and Coco kind of started feeding quite quickly. And it was just like so cozy, just like being looked after at home on my sofa. And my husband started doing like a little bit of cleaning up. Oh yeah, I forgot to say, sorry, another midwife arrived within the sort of last 2 hours. So I had 2 midwives with me at the end, which was lovely. I think that is the norm for a lot of districts, although don't quote me on that. And then Coco was fine, but basically because my waters had broken, sorry, but I've missed out quite an important part. The whole time when, so the beginning part of my labour, when the midwife first came round, she said to me, look, you're not actually like in established labour yet. So we might have to get you into hospital because you didn't go into established labour after a certain amount of time from your waters breaking, your baby could be at risk of infection. So we're going to have to probably take you into hospital at some point. And at the whole time in my labour, this was in the back of my mind because I was like, I just don't want to go. Like, this is fine. There wasn't much talk about it from my midwife. But I did see her on the phone at one point. Anyway, it turns out that the birth centre was so full that there wasn't really space for me anyway. So they were like, okay, we'll just keep her with you. I was like, well, I can't really care about me that much. So I remember just thinking, I'm not going to mention this again. Anyway, luckily, I didn't have to go in. But what they did want me to do was to go in to hospital after Coco was born. But right there, like lying on the sofa after a 20-something hour labour, well, I say like labour, but from first contraction to the end, it was a long time. The last thing I wanted to do was to go into hospital. Anyway, luckily, my midwife Frances said, look, this baby is like incredibly healthy. She was 8 pounds 6, and feeding and just, there was literally like nothing wrong with her. They said, like, if you want to stay here, stay here. Like, we're not going to force you to go into hospital. So that was a real relief because, I knew that we were all both fine.
Did they explain, what were they actually going to do in hospital?
They didn't explain. They just said it's called protocol, because because you didn't go into established labour for more than, it was, I don't know how many hours after, 24 hours after or something, then, your baby was at risk of infection. But because they could tell that she was healthy, they couldn't really justify it to me, which is why the midwife was like, don't worry, you're staying put. So I was really grateful for that. And then, I had a shower. Everything was perfect. I did actually have a couple of tears. I was sewn up at home, and, in advance of the birth, I'd bought like a lamp, and various other things just to kind of be fully prepped. So if anyone's planning a home birth, there are a few things that you should get, so you can everything can be done at home. Then after that, we were put into bed because it was about midnight or 1 a.m. at this point. And I just remember thinking, hang on, the midwife's about to leave me and my husband with this baby. Like, we don't know what we're doing. Like, this is a joke. And I remember kept asking questions like, what happens if, what happens if she wakes up? Or like all these like questions like, what do we do? Like, we're not fit to be parents. But it was all fine. She was like, don't worry, someone will be back in the morning. Just go to sleep now and have a good night. I just remember feeling sort of so high. I was a bit wired. It was just crazy. I couldn't sleep for ages. I was like, how can I sleep after I've literally just done this? Like, it's not happening. And I was absolutely starving as well, but I just couldn't get myself out of bed to go and eat something. So yeah, I did. Eventually I went to sleep. And the next morning, I think we woke up and the midwife was sort of there. And yeah, it was just, I think I was like, I was in that state of like happiness and ecstasy. I don't know, for like days afterwards, I guess it was just the oxytocin and, the whole,
all those endorphins.
All the endorphins and like everything we've learned on our course, like the main thing on my doula course, not the main thing, but like such an important part of birth is protecting the oxytocin. And I think that's what you really can do at home. And that is why I'm so like pro home birth. Like that feeling stayed with me for so long after. And I think it helped that Coco was a sort of not dream baby, but you know what I mean? Like she was so calm and we didn't really have any issues with her or everything just went well. So it was a very happy experience. And I just look back at it with like so much happiness. And I'm so glad that I like trusted my body and I knew what I wanted. And I was lucky. I think I was lucky that I got what I wanted, but also I don't think it was just luck. I think it was like it was trusting my body to do what it's meant to do, really.
And actually, it's really interesting you saying the bit of your story about going in for just to check the movements, really, and how actually, it could have taken a very different path. I wonder how often when people come on this podcast to tell their stories, it will rarely just be a simple case of, everything just went really smoothly to have this positive birth. I think realistically, we do need to be prepared for different situations that will arise. And generally, the maternity system likes to intervene. And actually, if at that point in time the consultant had come in and you hadn't really had any strong feelings about birth and how you wanted it to go, you probably would have said, okay, yeah, let me be induced. And, would have taken a different path, certainly. And kind of all the things you're saying were important to you about the birth being at home, at minimum, that would have been taken away from you.
Yeah, I always think that. I always say to my husband, like, imagine if I'd been induced, like, what would the whole experience look like? Probably wouldn't be talking to you now, Lisa, about this. It'd be so different. So, yeah, I always wonder about that.
Well, just really useful to know kind of any reflections. We've obviously just talked a little bit there about preparation, but anything else that you think was particularly beneficial or any wisdom, you're very welcome to draw on your second birth as well, if you want to. Anything that you can kind of hand down to our listeners?
I know I've probably touched on this, but it is the thing is trust yourself and your body and don't let anybody make you think that they know you and your body better than no, yeah, I got that wrong. Basically, you know your body better than anyone else, so don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Sorry, I completely blew that. Yeah, just shut off from all negativity and just research, understand what happens at each stage of labor. What does that look like? What does that potentially feel like? Surround yourself with positive stories, listen to positive podcasts. During pregnancy, I read Ina May's Gaskin's Guide to Childbirth. And that was a real turning point for me. Not a turning point, but it just kind of enhanced everything I was feeling. And it just gave me this excitement to give birth. So basically the book is, it's all birth stories from this birth centre called The Farm, which Ina May Gaskin, she basically runs it and I think has done since probably, I don't know, maybe the 70s. And it's all positive birth stories, mostly positive. And it's just amazing. It is honestly incredible. So if anyone is worried about birth, I would really recommend reading this book. It really made me feel so excited. I think that's the main word. And also getting a really good understanding of birth hormones in labour, understanding the role of oxytocin, endorphins, and adrenaline as well. I think understanding those as well is really key.
Yeah, thank you. And then just super briefly now at the end, because I think you mentioned that your second baby was born in hospital. But I think perhaps for many women, another amazing kind of legacy of having a positive first birth is that it really sets you in good stead for future births. And sadly, it's sort of the converse if you have a difficult first birth. So just any sort of broad sweep of that birth, and obviously it was in a different setting, and you'd really enjoyed being at home the first time. But were you able to keep it positive, and what did you kind of carry forward into that birth that helped you?
So the second birth was in a birth centre in Cambridge. It was in the Rosie, and we were in a lockdown. So it was the sort of January, February 2021 lockdown. So I was actually quite excited about a potential day out because I hadn't really left the house.
It's desperate times, isn't it?
Desperate times. But yeah, so I'd had a sweep the day before because I was having sort of the induction chat from my midwives. And I think at that point I was really nervous. I know I would have definitely been persuaded to have an induction. And I don't think I didn't know enough about, I don't know what I know now, having learned everything on my doula course. I think if I was to have another baby and I'd gone sort of overdue, I wouldn't be induced. But I think for this second birth, I probably would have given in and had been induced. So I ended up having a sweep because I was trying to do everything I could to avoid induction. So I had a sweep, and then sort of 5 a.m. the next morning, this was 41 plus 1. I'd been sniffing clary sage the night before, which is it's a herb that herbal remedy. It's an essential oil, I think, basically helps your womb to contract. But my dad works in essential oils and had given me this sort of very strong version. The bottle didn't even have a label on it. Probably don't know what it was. It was like, I don't know. Anyway, it was potent. I'd poured it onto a rag and I'd had it in the room, the whole room was like a clary sage, God knows what. Anyway, the next morning, I started feeling some twinges. And I kept running to the loo and said to my husband, I think it's started, I'm not sure. And he was like, yeah, it's definitely started. He could just tell in me, but I was slightly in denial, I think, because I'd had a few weeks running up to that point. I was like, it's happening, but it wasn't. Anyway, suddenly things ramped up very quickly. I was throwing up just from the intensity of it. And then my mum came in and was like, oh, do you want a cup of tea? I was like, do I look like I want a cup of tea? No. I was like, can you just go and make sure Coco's okay? Because it was about 6 a.m. at this point and I knew she'd be waking up soon. My husband called the birth centre and they started asking me questions something like date of your last period. And I was like, this is not relevant, but or something like that. And I was like, oh, when's your due date? Anyway, I couldn't answer. And things were happening really quickly. And so they were like, oh, she needs to come in immediately. And I said to my husband, I said, no, I don't. Like, that's ridiculous. And Gus said, no, like, you do. Things are happening fast. I ran around the house looking for my hairbrush and my hypnobirthing bit. God knows why, but I thought that they would be important at the time. Little did I know it was very fast. And then we went straight into hospital. And then the whole way on the drive to hospital, it was about a 20-minute drive. Gus was driving with one arm on the steering wheel and I was in the front seat, and I was like yelling at him to like push my back, like just, the sacrum part, your bottom of your back, because it really helped. Like he was like pushing it. I was like, push my back. I was surprised. It was amazing that we didn't crash. Anyway, we got into we got to the birth centre. Gus parked the car. I was met by the midwives, and I was taken into the birth, like a room. And I said, oh, please, can you fill up the pool? Like, I really want to get in. And things were just happening. All I remember is like the words that come to mind are sort of like intensity and speed. Like everything was just happening so fast. But I think that was because my contractions were so close together. There wasn't really much time in between them compared to my first labour with Coco. There was time in between them, whereas this second time just wasn't much time to kind of gather my thoughts. And I was thinking, I don't think I can hack another 20 hours of this, because I was comparing it to my labour with Coco. And I remember thinking, sort of lying, on the bed thinking, I'm going to need some pain relief because this is not okay. That is usually my threshold. When I think I need, pain relief, that's usually the point where it's like things about your baby's about to be born, or, you're transitioning. And then the pool still hadn't filled up. Gus had returned from parking the car. It was amazing, like really helping me. I was trying to use the gas and air, but it didn't work. Same with my first, actually. I didn't say that about my birth with Coco. I tried gas and air. It just made me feel very sick. And the sort of having that thing in my mouth during a contraction just didn't work for me. I didn't like it. Anyway, within like 45 minutes of being at the birth centre, I mean, the pool wasn't even filled up. I suddenly felt that like familiar burning feeling. And I thought, hang on a second, this cannot be happening. I was still fully clothed at this point. And I said to the midwife, I can feel a burning. I don't know why I felt like I needed her sort of like, green light, but I think I did in that moment. She said, your baby's coming, like get those leggings off immediately. And I was like, no, it's not. She said, yes, it is. Like, get your clothes off. And then literally like the next moment, so I'm probably going into way too many details, but I can't not.
No, I like it. To the bonus birth story.
The next moment, I literally this is where I feel like real like instinct just took over. So I got down on my knees. So one knee was on the floor and one foot was on the floor. And then my arms were on the bed. And then I just felt this like urge to push. And I pushed it. Well, my waters like broke. And I thought I'd like pooed myself or something. And I was like, oh no, I'm sorry. And the midwife was like, no, that's your waters. And I pushed again. And then his head came out. I think at that point, I was so like, that was probably, I just felt, I don't know, it was just very animalistic. It just wasn't even really like engaged with what was going on around me. And then I pushed again. And I knew though that the midwife was behind me and was kind of going to catch him. Because at that point I thought, I need to get this baby out for, for the, I guess, the pain to stop. And then I just remember feeling my head in my hands. And then my husband was laughing. And I said, why are you laughing? And he was like, do you want to know what the baby is? And I'd said the whole way through the pregnancy, it's a boy. Gosh, this baby is a mini you, because it was kicking around. I don't know, I just had the feeling. And he was laughing. He's like, it's a boy. So, yeah, it was just so different. And so the intensity of it was just crazy. I look back at that and, obviously that was it was a positive experience because, nothing went wrong in the birth. And it was, I think I couldn't compare them because they were so different. Someone was like, oh, I probably would have rather, I can't decide whether I would have rathered a long birth or a short birth because, a short birth's more intense, The only thing that slightly tainted my second experience was that I was slightly coerced into having active management for the birth of the placenta, which was quite disappointing because basically, really disappointingly, the midwives were great there, but a midwife did sort of lie to me and say I had to have the injection to birth my placenta, which it turns out I didn't. I could have birthed it naturally. But, nothing nothing went wrong. And, I don't know why she said that. Maybe she was confused. I don't know. But I kind of wished in that situation, looking back, if I'd had a doula with me or someone who hadn't, if I hadn't just given birth, I would have been able to question it. But I wasn't thinking straight. So if I'd had a doula with me, a doula might have said, hang on a second, she wants to birth the placenta naturally. I don't see any reason why she can't, So that was the only negative thing. But I've really learned from that. And if I do have another baby or when I'm working with clients, those are the things that, I can kind of help people out with. I had, and then the rest of the experience in the birth center was beautiful. We had like a double bed. It was so well looked after. So the shift changed after the baby was born. And then we had new midwives, and just the whole experience after that was just lovely. We stayed in for a few hours, had delicious tea and toast, which I'm sure most people who give birth in hospital know about, because it's just like the best toast and tea you'll ever have. And then we left and got home in time for Coco's tea time and bath time. So that was really wonderful. And yeah, I just loved both experiences. They were so different. I couldn't compare them really. Just love giving birth.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. And actually, it's really helpful, I think, that, when we talk about positive birth, we're not necessarily talking about perfect birth. And, that situation shouldn't have happened to you with your placenta, but and I'm not detracting from that, but equally, just because overall you'd had such a positive experience, it gives you that buffer to kind of weather.
Yeah, exactly.
And I also love all the little humorous bits as well. And I think, again, often when we think the kind of our cultural narrative of birth is really not something that you'd be finding anything to laugh about. And I love all those bits and stories. And, laughing at the moment that he's born, like it's such a lovely way to welcome someone to the world.
I love it. There's one other funny thing from the first birth, which was me and my best friend Jules always talk about it. She always reminds me, is when I was telling her about my birth story with Coco, Gus, obviously, he has his version of events, which they do slightly differ, because he keeps saying to me, George, you weren't in the room, you don't have any idea what was happening. But he said at one point he went upstairs and screamed into a pillow, which makes me laugh so much, because I think he needed some sort of outlet of this experience. It's just like nothing he's ever done before. So yeah, I always think about that and laugh, because he obviously didn't want anyone to know how he was feeling, but he was probably like, oh my God. So yeah, that does make me laugh. But I love looking back at all these positive, happy things, because, you're right. The cultural conditioning that we have is that birth is terrifying, scary, dark, dangerous. And there should be laughter and joy, and yeah, there are, but it's hard. It's not a walk in the park. I'm not saying that. I did find it really hard, but obviously, if you trust your body and that the pain you feel isn't pathological pain, it's not like you've been in a serious car accident or something. That feeling is meant is what your body is meant to be doing, which is how I kind of rationalized it. I wasn't scared. I was like, okay, I can work with this because I'm not scared. It's not scary pain. And yeah, that's probably what I'd really I'd pass on to people.
That's amazing. I think that's a brilliant place to wrap up. So thank you so much for sharing both your stories with us. And I'm sure it'll be really helpful to others. Thanks, Georgina. This podcast does not present itself as medical advice, and neither should it be taken as such. The views represented here are personal to the women telling their stories. Sorry for this slightly patronising disclaimer, but such is the world we live in today. Always seek out the information you need before making your own decisions.